Agent Carter season 1 starts off a year after the first Captain America film. So Peggy's been grieving the death, or she thinks the death, of Steve Rogers. And because it's 1946, the men have all come back from war and the women are sidelined in the workplace. So she is demoted to preparing lunches and making coffee. And so it's very frustrating to her. She's a kind of victim of sexism in this male-dominated world. Howard Stark comes along and sets her on this new kind of secret mission and to clear his name. And so she has to be, she's working with him on the side as well as struggling with things in the office. So it's quite a difficult time for her.
What was your reaction to being told that you were potentially getting to do a series with Peggy?
It just blew my mind, and it was such a huge privilege. It was actually in the back of a car. We were on our way for a Chinese meal with the co-president of Marvel, Luis Esposito, who really championed the show, and we created this short film together, the Marvel one-shot. And after that, and the success of that in the San Diego Comic-Con, he just turned to me and said, "How do you feel about making a show?" And I jumped at the chance because I thought there were so many more stories that Peggy could tell. She was such an interesting and enigmatic character. I wanted to kind of get under her skin a little bit more.
Should have called first. Did you miss me?
It ain't life and death.
You have no idea.
Now that's the Peggy Carter I need.
I seem to have a habit of losing people closest to me.
What do you have to take into consideration for yourself in committing to a role long term?
Well, I think probably the stamina that it takes. When you're leading a show and you're in pretty much every scene and you're driving the scene and you're setting the atmosphere and the tone for the whole set, it takes there's a responsibility there to lead and to make sure that everyone feels validated in the jobs that they're doing and that it's a fun, relaxed environment to work in so that people do their best work. So I think that's the kind of the biggest learning curve that I've had from playing Peggy in this context. And then I also think you inherit a huge fan base, the Marvel fans.
Have you met any superfans?
I've met quite a few people who've dressed up as Peggy, including a couple of guys, and with the red hats and the blue jackets, looking a little bit like Paddington Bear as well. But they're wonderful. I've met a lot of young kids who quote the line that Peggy has towards the end of the season, where she says, "I know my value. Anyone else's opinion doesn't really matter." And that's been lovely to hear back from people who feel like they've taken Peggy into their hearts, and they get to tell me that she's become a role model and she's become a positive influence in their lives, and that's a lovely kind of byproduct of doing a show like this.
Were you a comic book fan before all of this?
I hate to say that I wasn't, and I didn't know anything. But in a way, the good thing about that was I didn't feel the pressure or the responsibility to live up to anything, because I didn't know what I was going to be living up to. I think if anything, it's not wanting to disappoint the fans who have been so loyal and committed to supporting the Peggy cause. So that's where the pressure is on.
There's quite a few Brits on set. Do you guys hang out together?
Yeah, well, I've known James Darcy and Dominic Cooper for the last 10 years, okay. And so they're like old friends. I worked with Dominic on The Duchess, and I worked with James Darcy on an adaptation of Mansfield Park for the BBC. So the ice was already broken with them, which is great. And they're pranksters, they're fun-loving guys who know exactly how to have a good time, and they create a really lovely working environment where everyone feels relaxed in their company, and they're still great at what they do when the cameras roll. So it's a really nice balance to have the Brits all together. It feels like we're taking over, which is nice.
Less homesick as well, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. They get my kind of kooky, goofball sense of humour.